Welcome everybody to our DYRK1A Insights. It has been a year since our last one, so thank you very much. Just few housekeeping here. As I mentioned, everybody's on mute. I'm gonna give the option to open the microphone when we start, so people feel free to ask questions, but you also have the Q&A panel, so feel free to if you don't want to get off mute, there's too much background. I do understand those. So just ask your question in the Q&A panel. I will be monitoring that and relaying the question to Megan. This session is being recorded, and I hope everybody enjoy the time and see the value to provide the data. This is our open party for the Xcelerate RARE event. Is a rare disease open science data challenge, and we have our time now to be able to provide the data and get more attention of scientists for research around DYRK1A. You saw in our Facebook probably that just for showing up here today, you're going to receive a gift card. And all of us, when register in the RareX portal, is going to enter to win to a chance to win a tablet. So good luck, everybody. Our presenter is Megan O'Boyle. I will let her get from here and start sharing her slides and get this party started. Megan, good night, good evening.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you everybody for coming. I'll just briefly, let me just start to share my screen. A little bit about me. I have a 22-year-old daughter with Phelan-McDermid syndrome. In 2000, she was the 35th known with the syndrome, and now we know of maybe 3,000 in the world. I did not start a foundation. I was not interested in research. I was just going about my business, trying to keep her healthy. And somebody from our foundation asked me to help collect data in 2010. And I helped our foundation do that for 10 years and learned lots and lots of lessons the hard way. And now somebody with a PhD is in charge of that. In 2019, RareX came to be, and I was asked to be the patient engagement lead, which is a fancy way of saying I talk to organizations like you and say, please don't make the mistakes that our group did. Let RareX do all the hard work for you and take all the cost and get more data under more eyes around the world faster. So I get very passionate about this because I spent so much time and our foundation spent so much money doing something that we were told to do by FDA and NORD and everybody else, but nobody told us how to do it correctly. And so after 10 years, we didn't have many publications. We realized that we were doing something wrong. And so RareX is trying to help all rare diseases that are interested in collecting patient or parent caregiver reported data to get it done right and get it out and get it, make sure it's high quality. I'm going to go ahead and put it in slideshow. I'm going to try and go quickly through these. Your community actually launched the DYRK1A data collection program. Some people call these a registry a year ago. And we really thought it was time that we reintroduce it because you guys have been busy with so many other things. This is not the same as the Tiger study. It's not the same as Simon's Foundation or Genida, but it's very similar. And we partner with Simon's and we've reached out to Genida, and I can talk to you more about the differences at the end, but this is not an instead of, this is an also. And we can talk about that if you have any questions. So just some background on RareX. We are a program under the Global Genes, which is an umbrella advocacy organization. It's a nonprofit to support groups like yours. It was born RareX was born out of a lot of frustration that organizations like yours were being expected to take the burden of collecting data for research and the cost and the responsibility and so forth. And researchers weren't getting high quality data. So RareX is trying to solve that. We're a platform that collects data. You contribute it. We can connect to existing data. For instance, Someday we may connect to the Simons, de-identified Simons data. Someday, I'm not saying we're doing it now, but we're always looking for partners. And in the end, most importantly, getting that data out the door. We're sharing data, but always in a de-identified way. The only stakeholder that sees your identification is RareX, and we go to great lengths to secure that. Your organization will only see de-identified summary data. You, of course, have access to your own identified data, and you can share it any way you want. Researchers will never, ever see identified data. If they want to recruit you, they'll do that through us. So your organization was one of the first to pilot with us. And so we went back to them and said, why did you take a chance on RareX? And it wasn't just because we weren't charging them any money. It was because they were comfortable with you owning and managing the data. When you enroll, you get to decide if you want to share your data broadly or you want to put some limitations on it. They also recognized that we were providing the structured and standardized surveys. Rare diseases used to think that if they made up their own questions about their disease, that they were better because they were specific. But the fact is, although we're rare, we are not unique. For instance, my daughter's syndrome involves communication delay, autism, epilepsy, sensory issues, GI issues, sleep issues. And that's just a few things. And in what little I know about your community, I think you all have a lot in common. So being rare is one thing, but when you're trying to find treatments, sometimes being researched along similar diseases is really important. RareX takes on all of the governance, and that's a very big bucket of responsibility that your organization doesn't have to have. So we are responsible legally, ethically, financially for all of the data in how it's collected, where it's stored, how it's shared, and who it's shared with. So, and we do that under international compliance. One of the most important things about RareX is we're streamlining how the researchers can get the data. They don't even have to know what DYRK1A is. They may stumble across your data, and I can talk more about that later. And all of this is obviously to speed up treatment. More importantly, not why did your foundation pick us, why should you give us your time? And at this time, I'm going to remind Anna to put in the chat the link to the portal that will get you into this data collection. And you're welcome to ignore me and go ahead and enroll yourself if you want while I'm talking. I understand what it's like to be a caregiver and sleep deprived and not remembering when your last shower or meal was. So it's very important to me that you understand that this isn't a favor you're doing for researchers or drug developers. This is something that you will be able to use. We will return summary data to your organization, and it may come in handy in an IEP meeting, or it may be helpful to explain something to your medical team. So this is not just for research, but for those who are interested in research, it will be a great way to be found for trials and for studies, because researchers who know and don't know about DYRK1A will be querying the data that's in RareX. All of the data from all of the diseases that we're collecting data from. So they may put in something that your family member qualifies for, and then we would notify you and you can decide whether you want to look more into it. The ability to update your symptoms at any time. Simon's Searchlight is very similar to us in that they're open data source. They also want to share their data with researchers around the world. They're not locking it up for their own use. They have more of a focus on autism and intellectual disability. And my understanding is that they will come to you when they need you to update your data. But they also do return data, which is what I think is the most important thing. In RareX, we want you to go in and log in when something changes. If there's progress, if there's regression, if somebody starts having seizures that didn't previously have seizures, we don't want you to wait till that 1-year reminder comes, because this is your microphone. This is how you're going to tell your story about your experience with DYRK1A. So being able to go in and update at any time is important, at least once a year. And just so you know, when researchers come in, they will see all those timestamps. So they will see the longitudinal data. So bear with me on the crazy slide. We bring in several disease communities at a time, and we train their leadership over 4 weeks, and we build them a beautiful community page. I'll show you yours. And we launch to their community like I am doing right now, and then it's up to you. And this will be as wonderful or average as you make it. So the more of you that are enrolled, fantastic. You need to finish the consent and the data sharing, which says, I want to share widely or I want to share with limitations. Your demographics, and then we're off to the races. The health and development survey that I call the head to toe survey is what decides what other surveys you're going to get. So are there brain issues? If you say yes, then in your dashboard, the neurology survey will be added. We may not have a survey for something. We didn't have a seizure survey until 1 month ago. So if we don't have a survey and we add it later and it applies to you, you'll get an email and a text saying, hey, we're really excited. We now have a sleep survey. Please come back. So it's not just, again, a one-time or once a year thing. We also have some optional surveys. Down at the bottom are those researchers. And they go in through one door, they set up an account, they promise to be responsible, and then they can query data. And like I said, they can look at diseases that they're interested in. Right now, we will have about 60 diseases by the end of the month in our first year. Or they may look at genes. Or, and this is where you and I should get very excited, they may be looking at symptoms. So for instance, of the 40 diseases that are currently on RARE, most of them are neurodevelopmental disorders like yours and my daughter's. And so if someone were to query boys under the age of puberty that have epilepsy, low muscle tone, and frequent ear infections, they would have participants from almost every disease in here because those are all common symptoms of all these different rare diseases. So those researchers that may never have heard of DYRK1A may stumble across your family member's data and say, wow, I didn't know about this disease, but this is exactly the thing that I'm trying to study. And that's incredibly exciting. It's also researchers around the world. So on the left is how research happened. When I was helping my organization collect data, the researcher had to know we existed. They'd have to knock on our door. We'd like your data for this reason, or we'd like to ask your families these questions. And then we as volunteer moms and dads had to decide if the researcher was worthy. We de-identify the data, we'd send it off, and we wouldn't know what happened. We wouldn't know if they shared it with other people. We wouldn't know if they published on it unless we found out later. In RARE on the right, any of the 10,000 rare diseases can start contributing data to RARE. And these researchers that you see on the far right can go in and look across disease or specifically at a disease. So housekeeping, there's certain browsers that work better than others. Don't use Internet Explorer. You don't have to do this all at once. Let's face it, if I don't get interrupted in the next 45 minutes, then my husband's pulling off of a miracle, because that's just how our lives are. The doorbell rings, diapers need to be changed, people cry. So get what you can get done and come back, and we will send you periodic reminders, but we don't want to spam you, so we may stop reminding you. So you'll go from your website or your social media or this chat box to your community page, and then you'll set up your account. This is where you'll find us on your website, and this is your beautiful community page. If I could scroll down, there's frequently asked questions, there's reasons why you should do this. I'm not telling you to go in blindly. If you have any questions that this page doesn't answer, I'm happy to answer them for you. Before you hit the Get Started button, if you have any concerns about our privacy or terms of use, there's a click right there. So we understand that this is your family member's health data. hopefully their genetic data, and we want you to feel very secure about it. These are some of the frequently asked questions. We do have this community page in several languages listed on the left. Unfortunately, once you hit get started, everything's going to be in English, but we are introducing French, Spanish, and Portuguese later in 2023. I'm going to go quickly through these slides because I'm pretty sure that you've all set up accounts with passwords and double verification. On this login, though, this is before you get into anywhere else. We need to ask you questions so we know which consent to send you. So in different states, you have different ages of adult, and depending on whether the person is an adult or a minor is a different consent. If you are outside of the United States, then we have to know what country you're from because your data regulations may be different than the other European country next to you. And we have to comply country by country. It's not just GDPR or India or China. We have to go country by country. So at the bottom, you would check all of the things that apply to you. So if you are a caregiver, you check that. If you have DYRK1A and you're a caregiver, you would check both. Sorry, I'm not advancing. So this is the part where I'm sure you can work it out. And again, if you have questions about the privacy policy, every time you log in, there's a place where you can click. The first screen you're going to get when you get in here is the terms of use for Matrix. That's the technology that we're sitting on. So there's our privacy in terms of use, and then there's theirs. Finally, the informed consent. You know, it's that 20-page legal document that they hand to us right before the surgery or the procedure that if it's for our child, we don't have time to read because our child is now trying to take off their clothes or run down the hall. So we flip to the back and we sign it. I want you to read this. And so we tried to make it as simple and clear as possible. We have short answers and we have long answers. If you choose to skip it and hit next, that's up to you. But again, we want you to feel secure. We want you to know what's being done with your data. The second to last page, again, you'll have to say what your role is. And then sometimes people like me don't read directions because we think that we're smarter than what we're doing, or we're multitasking. Please make sure that you put your child's name when they ask for child's name and your name when it's your name, because we don't want there to be confusion down the road. Then we're going to ask for demographics. And on this page, I will say, going forward after this, surveys are optional, but once you start a survey, all questions are mandatory because if you skip a question, it provides dirty data to researchers. So in this, if you don't want to answer something, you can say prefer not to answer, we have done on one of these, estimated household income, which by the way is not a fundraising question. It's a socioeconomic research question. At the bottom, you type in DYRK1A and it should come up. If your family member has another diagnosis, rare or not, scroll through. If it's not there, then you can type it in. Just hit other and then type it in. If I don't know if your community has people that are diagnosed with Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, but our community does. It's a clinical diagnosis associated with seizures, and that does happen to be in our dropdown. At this point, I want to tell you, this is about all of your health data, whether it's related to DYRK1A or not. So if there's a question you think, but I don't know if that's the syndrome, it doesn't matter. We want to know about the whole person. And there may be things about this syndrome that researchers never used to ask, and so nobody thought was associated with it, and we want to figure that out. But sometimes people have multiple diagnoses. This is where you manage your data. I don't decide how it's going to be shared. Your foundation doesn't decide. You decide if you want to share your data broadly or you want to put some limitations on it. I chose general research, but you may choose only health and medical research. It's your choice. And you can change your mind an hour later, a day later, a year later. So you're not locked into these decisions. I did not check either of these boxes, but if you check the first box, you're saying, I will share my data, de-identified data, with any kind of researcher but pharma and biotech, because some people don't like drug companies. I would like my data to go there. The second one says you'll share your data with any researchers that have an institutional review board approval. That means if they're working out of a university, that their university's ethics board has reviewed what they're doing, which is a perfectly normal requirement. I did not choose that. I'm okay with some mathematician at Stanford who's looking for patterns in data to play around with my data because they might find something. The rest of the questions in the data sharing survey are just, we're taking a poll. Do you have biosamples? If so, where are they? We want to be able to inform your foundation that, wow, there's a lot of people that did this other study in Europe. We should see if we can connect to that study. Or, wow, there's a lot of people that have, biosamples at Coriell. We should reach out to them. So this is all just asking if you're interested. So in the future, would you be interested in having medical records connected to RareX? I'm not going to do it now, and you're not signing up to do it now. I just want to know if you're willing to do it. This is just saying that you would like to share your name and email, nothing else, with this foundation and any other DYRK1 foundations that we partner with. And once a quarter, we will share the names and emails. And if you choose not to, then we won't. The purpose is that so your organization, if they don't already know about you, will have your contact information so they can tell you things about webinars and conferences and fundraising and research. So if you're a caregiver, you've done the consent, you've done your demographics, you've consented for your data because you've just given your name and address and marital status. You've decided how you're going to share your data, and now you're going to add your patient. So I add my daughter. Now I have to consent for her data. Even though she's an adult, I'm her guardian. And now I have to answer the same survey questions about how I want to share her data. These are international data regulations that we're following. We're not trying to waste your time. Once you get through those two surveys for your patient, then you can get to the head-to-toe survey. I would suggest if you don't already have your genetic report, get it. If you don't know how to get it, reach out to your foundation. We'll help them. If you have it, scan it and be ready to upload it under the documents. I would suggest you do it before you start answering the surveys so you don't forget. It's really important that if you have the genetic report, that genetics sits next to your answers. But your report has identifiers, so we have to have you upload it, and then we manually take the information and put it in the back door so that your genetics and your symptoms are together. So you add the patient. If at some point you leave and you come back and you're like, I don't know if I was in my account or my child's account, the upper left-hand corner is your cheat sheet. It'll tell you who it is and what role they have. This is where I'm talking about the genetic report. On the left, it says documents. You click on upload. You go into your files. You click on the genetic report, and then you have it there. And if a year from now somebody asks you for the genetic report, you can always come back and you can download it so you have it's a safe place to keep it. Now we have the head-to-toe survey. You don't need medical records for this. It's very simple. Every system of the body, from head to toe, from brain to bones, one question and one yes, no, or unsure. If you say yes or unsure, then you will get a second survey later. You don't get sent to down a rabbit hole. You finish this survey, and then more surveys will show up in your dashboard. These suggested times are incredibly conservative. Head-to-toe survey does not take me 15 to 20 minutes. I would put it in the 5-minute category, but it does have more questions than a lot of it has. We have a lot of systems in the body. This is how simple they are. Have you had issues with your eye or vision? And then it gives some examples. At the end, it says, do you have a genetic report? Why did you get genetics done? And please upload it. Again, we really want your genetic report. And the reason I'm saying this is I believe that you know that what your child has. but the researchers don't necessarily want to go by what you picked in that dropdown. They want to see it in a genetic report, because some people in the world of online haven't gotten a diagnosis. They've searched online and found a syndrome that sounds like theirs, and they join the Facebook and everybody sounds like their life, and they think that's what they have. And since that has become more common, the genetic report has become the more important gold standard for researchers. So here you'll see that this person said yes to ears and eyes and kidney. So let me give you a heads up if you have repeated ear infections.
So I have one question for you, Megan, about the genetic report. There's a question here in the chat. Say, can you send a cropped genetic report?
I'm sorry, what?
If you can crop the genetic report before you send?
To take out the identifiers? I'm not sure what you would be cropping out.
Yes, let me see. Let me, yes, to take off the identifiers.
Well, we're going to take out the identifiers. What we're going to do is our genetic counselors will take that report. And we have your identifiers from all of the information you just gave. So remember, we're the only ones that see your identification. We take that report and we take that string of letters and numbers and decimal points, and that goes in. But we take out dozens of items from your genetic report, goes into what's called a genetic curation survey. And so, and it's done very meticulously because we can't move any of those decimal points or letters, and then it becomes a different diagnosis. And so there's no need to crop it. The issues that we're having with the uploads is some people have a letter that says this patient has this, but it's not from a lab. Like this, a genetic report from a genetics lab has certain criteria. And so if we get the wrong thing, we might contact you and say, this isn't it. Certain countries have a hard time getting their genetic reports. Those of you, people that were, in our organization, we had people that were diagnosed, decades ago, and they had, their doctors hadn't kept things. So generally, if you can't get it, you go to your doctor, find out where they ordered it, and then you go to the lab, and then you have to provide a release. But hopefully you all will have them and have them scanned. If you had more than one, that's okay. Right now, we're not curating a parent's genetic report. If you feel the need to upload your parent genetic report, you must upload it under the parent, under the caregiver's account, not the patient. But I don't want to tell you to upload something that we're not doing anything with. People asked if they could upload, EEG reports. Physically, you can, but we're not curating those yet. So I don't want to be taking data from you that we don't need at this time. We hope to be collecting other reports down the road. We hope to be connecting to medical records down the road. But for now, this is it.
So there's one more question under the report here. We found out about the diagnosis recently. We haven't entered our data to RARE, Tiger, or Simons. It seems like some want to redo genetic testing. Is that necessary? Can we participate by sharing the genome results we already have?
Yes. So nobody needs to get retested. Whether you have a microarray, a FISH, a karyotype, many of you may have sequencing. Sequencing was not around when my daughter was diagnosed. Whatever you have would be fantastic. Obviously, the newer diagnoses are much more sophisticated. And also, Anna, can you put into the chat support at rare-x.org? And I'll go over that again at the end, but that's where we send all of our questions. This is just an example of a level 2, so eyes and vision.
Oh.
A lot of neurological diseases like ours, they never mention anything about vision, but then on Facebook, you see people asking about, did your kids have the eye that goes a little bit to the side? It's more common than researchers have asked about. So If you say yes to something, then it says, when did the symptom appear and when was the diagnosis? If you say no, like on the third question, that's the end of it. Now, symptom is, when did your mom or dad gut say something's wrong? Doesn't matter if you were ignored by the pediatrician or the neurologist. When did you see it? Age of diagnosis is, when did it make it into the medical record, or when was it recognized by a physician? This can happen on the same day, and it can happen years apart. So don't fret about getting the exact day, year, month, whatever. If you know it was that around the time that you lived in that second house, ballpark it. We're really just trying to figure out what the age of onset is here, and we want to see what the delay is. At the bottom of every level 2, it says basically, what did we not ask you about? So this is an example from another group under the head, neck, and face and neck survey, which I checked because my daughter has dysmorphic features. This person said, yes, there's additional issues, and they said microcephaly. This person could have actually clicked for this. You can say another issue, another issue, another issue. But when you're typing something in anywhere in RareX, please don't use your child's name, because then that's an identifier we'll have to take out. This is just another example. We didn't ask about aortic root dilation, so the person added it. So in your dashboard, you've been gone for 6 months. You can't remember which surveys you completed and which ones you didn't. Don't worry about it. There's a file tab for completed, and there's one for new. And we just added like 15 new neurodevelopmental surveys. So, you may go in there and there may be no new ones, and there may be 12. On the far right, these 3 buttons, which apparently are called ellipse, you can view your answers. You can edit your answers. So you said no to seizures, and sadly, last week your child had a seizure. When the dust settles, log in, change your no to a yes, so that you will now have the seizure survey in your dashboard, and now you can answer that. Remember, the data tells the story, and we need the researchers and the drug developers to understand the story of DYRK1A. And these don't do it, and the colored light bulbs don't do it. I mean, I wear these awareness bracelets, but that creates awareness in the grocery store. It doesn't create awareness in our neurologist's office or at the drug companies. So you want your data to be complete, and you want it to update it before you forget things. This is just an example of the quality of life survey that we started with. And 2 months in, we decided this is not appropriate for people who have a family member that cannot communicate well. My daughter cannot speak. I don't know if she was worried 7 days ago. So we went out and we found a more appropriate quality of life survey, and that's the one that you would want to choose. It's QOL -disability. So hopefully you'll be routed that way when you answer one of the communication questions. So that's the end of my regular presentation. But as luck would have it, we had some very philanthropists that were very generous, and we have 3 $50,000 grants for researchers to win. Now, researchers are always looking for money, and they are always looking for data to publish on. So we are setting up a contest that starts in May, and researchers will get on teams, and they'll have 2 months to play with the data, to look, to find, to crunch it, to slice it, to dice it. And then they'll have this contest, and they can win these grants. The beauty is that everybody that gets their genetic report in by February 28th, which is Rare Disease Day, and finishes their surveys by March 30th, will have their data in for the May contest. And sorry, these are the wrong dates. So this is what I showed you before. The researcher has to know you, then they have to ask for it. But hey, we're doing it so much better. This is what's going to happen in May. We're putting the word out to thousands of researchers. we'll probably get participation from hundreds. And guess what? Out of the 41 diseases in Rare X today, only 25 will be of interest, and DYRK1A is one of the 25. So we're going to have all these researchers from around the world going in and looking at this data and trying to find solutions, trying to find patterns, trying to answer questions, and trying to win money. So it's a win-win. So although I know you guys don't have time for yourselves and 3 meals a day, and you might not have slept more than 4 hours last night, try and click on the enroll today. If you enrolled a year ago and you don't know what you answered, it's okay, go back in. If you forgot your password, hit forget password. If you're not sure if you did it, once you put in your email, if we've already got your email, it'll say you already have an account. But be counted and be seen. This is a huge opportunity. But this isn't the end of it. We are not doing this just for this contest. We don't have a grant just for a year or 5 years. We are a nonprofit that wants to collect as much data from as many patients with as many rare diseases and get it out to as many researchers for as long as possible. And only a nonprofit could accomplish that, because if we were trying to make money on it, we would have to like lock it up and sell it to people. So we didn't want to do that. So this is not the Rare X data collection, not the NIH data collection. This is the DYRK1A global data collection. It's yours. You decide what you're going to put in it. You decide how often you're going to do it. You decide how good the quality of the data is. And you as a community can build something that could be considered, what I hate the term natural history study because it sounds like something at a museum. But when people talk about a natural history study, they say it's progression of disease. What does this disease look like in this one patient? What does this disease look like across all the patients? The more DYRK1A families that enroll and come back at least once a year, the more of the story we'll have on DYRK1A, and the more attention you will attract. So again, nice to build awareness in the grocery store, but the data is going to build awareness where we need it. The last slide is, if you have a glitch, if you don't like the privacy policy, if you're confused why you have a certain survey, if anything is confusing or offensive or you don't like or you have a suggestion, support@rare-x.org. But we want your foundation to know that we're doing a good job or a not so good job. So CC admin@DYRK1A.org. And they won't have to tell us because we'll be on the email. But that way they can see if we're getting a lot of emails from you or just a few here and there. So we want to hear from you. We've been at this a year, and every month we make changes based on what we hear from other people. So I'm going to stop sharing. Hopefully nobody's paying attention to me because they're all so busy answering surveys.
So there's some nice comments and questions here for us. One comment that's fantastic, that the time to complete the survey is only about 5-10 minutes. This is less daunting and more attractive to complete. And I can see on that, like, and I just complete all my Rare X enrollment. Well, I did like in the past, but I went more recently complete some surveys, and it's good that they're all broken up, so you can do like a little bit at a time, like, oh, I have some time, 5 minutes now, do 10 minutes another time. So is the way to do. So this great comment here.
I will say one of the new surveys we've added is the Vineland. I kind of get that feeling every time I say it. Remember, my daughter's 22. I've filled out a lot of Vinelands in my lifetime. The reason it's there, and it may take 45 minutes, is because that is the measure that researchers go by for syndromes like this. It's the first thing they want to know. So if we say, hey, researchers, we've got Vineland scores on these 25 diseases, they're going to come running. But I recognize that it's not fun, and I recognize that it's a lot of time, But here's our goal, that when a researcher comes to us in 2 years and says, or comes to you, your foundation in 2 years and says, hey, we want your families to do the Vineland, you can say, hey, you know what? They already did it. Go to RareX. So we're trying to get this to be the central place. So instead of researchers asking you all these different things, we did talk to Janita and they love what we're doing. They can't share with us because their French ethics rules, they're not allowed to know, they can't know any of the identifiers. So we can't connect with their data. But they, like Simon's, focus on intellectual disability and autism. So I highly encourage you to stay involved in both of those studies. But remember, this is head to toe. And so I said I would talk to you about the difference, but yes, there is a
Yes,
Vineland.
that's one question. The next question here, from your perspective, Megan, it's like, if we enter the data in RareX, does it make sense to enter in the others as well, like Tiger, Simons, and other studies?
So yes, because they might be doing a deeper dive on something that we're not going to do a deep dive on. Yes, because the people from those studies may be going into RareX to learn things also. Like I said, the Simons data is shared very broadly, and I think Janita is as well. I don't know about Tiger, but if it's like most studies at an institution, they have to keep it within their institution until it's published. They're not doing anything wrong. It's the way research is designed. And so if somebody else wanted to do a survey or a study like Tiger and they did it at a different institution, then you'd have to do everything over again and they wouldn't be able to share it. So what we're trying to do here is collect a lot of data and share it out to those researchers, have them come in and find people for further studies that are deeper dives. It might ask, much more specific questions than we're asking.
Thank you, Megan, for your point. I know sometimes it seems overwhelmed, but I personally chose to participate in all of those. So even though it's a lot of time for my family, I believe invest time in research. At least my personal belief is the best gift I can give to my daughter and for the future DYRK1A folks.
And I appreciate that. I was one of those people until I got voluntold to help with the registry when my daughter was 10. I didn't think anything was going to happen in my daughter's lifetime. And I wasn't reading about the research. I wasn't really interested in it. I mean, I wasn't against it. I just didn't think it was going to happen so fast. I was so wrong. It is happening at lightning speed, especially the genetic stuff. And I will tell you what I heard a researcher say at another conference. And of the 40 groups that we have, of the 25 that are in this space, like your disease, maybe half are in Simon Searchlight. So this is very common. And when they have conferences, it's like Citizen, Simons, and then RareX. And we support each other because we all know what we're doing is a little different and important. But the researcher giving the talk at the front of the room said, there may be overlap, but that's how we get validation. So remember back in science class, you do something, but then you got to replicate it. Well, if you're doing Simons at the same time you're doing RareX, and they come to the same conclusion, guess what? We don't have to wait 5 years for another person to replicate it. It's been validated. So that's one way of feeling like you're not, some of it may be duplicative. A lot of it won't be. I mean, they're not going to be asking about a lot of the other systems of the body. But I will commend your organization for partnering with good partners.
There's some comments like, be counted, be seen. That's awesome. And one other questions. You mentioned that this is open for global researchers. And how do they know about RareX?
A couple of ways. So the data is going to be disseminated through a research portal that's built on technology from the Broad Institute, also a nonprofit that shares our mission of open science, open data. This platform has existed for many years. It has some very large cancer studies. It has a 1 million-person NIH study on it. So researchers from around the world, some of them have been using this platform. This is just a different pot of data they'll get to see now. And we will be marketing this to researchers around the world. And we'll really emphasize it in the neurodevelopment world first, because that's the most data we'll have. But we're bringing on vision loss groups and hearing loss groups and immune. I mean, we'll always be adding surveys on different parts of systems of the body. We will give you tools to spread the word with your researchers. But, you know, I can tell you as a parent who went to family conferences every 2 years, we loved our researchers, but it was the same researchers just publishing on the same patients. We got to get some new people with some novel ideas also. We like our tried and true researchers, and they've stuck with us and they've gotten grants. So that's great. But we got to get some new blood too that might think in different ways. So it's on us to find those people that don't know about DYRK1A. We provide training if they're not used to the platform. The data goes to a cloud for international data regulations. Those of you in Europe know that your data has to stay in your country. So the data doesn't get pulled to RareX. The researchers look into the data and they do analysis. And there's all these cool analysis tools that I am not a data wonk, so I don't know about. But this is making it really easy for researchers. Normally they have to get a grant, so they have to find money. Then they have to recruit the patients. You're doing that and we're doing that. Then they have to consent them. We did it. Then they have to get their trust. And then they have to come up with the surveys. We're doing it. Then they have to analyze it. Well, we're giving them the tools to analyze it. And it's all at no cost. It's no cost to the researcher at Stanford that's still getting his PhD, or to the NIH researcher, or to the biotech or pharma researcher. It's the same level playing field. Everybody gets access to your de-identified data if you chose to share it with that type of researcher. Remember, that's up to you.
Thank you, Megan. Couple other comments here. One is thank you. This is very informative. Another one about your last comment now, how they find, like, agree, and this is why asking about how you reach out to those not aware with the big care to research. Some comments say that I'm open to participate in any research. That's great to hear. So right now, if you would like to ask a question, a comment, or anything around the live, just you can raise your hand. There's a little icon hand in your app or your browser. You can raise. I can unmute you. Feel free.
I do see one question. Tracy, is RareX reaching out to rare disease organizations, for example, Rare Voices, Australia, and so on? NORD actually has their own, they call it a registry, it's called I Am Rare. And some rare diseases have chosen to collect data there. Now that we're part of Genetic Alliance, this would be considered a Genetic Alliance program. Global Genes. Genetic Alliance, which is a different group, also has a data collection platform. DYRK1A chose ours for several reasons. One is because of the international compliance. Some of our diseases are just too small to collect in one language, in one country. And RareX understood that. I mean, we have diseases that only have 50 people in the world. So although we're still in English and we're only coming out with 3 languages in the next year, we are committed to getting, the Middle Eastern languages and the Asian languages in, because we need to find every patient. If we're lucky enough to get drug trials, we don't want to run out of patients. We want to be able to find them wherever they are. And some of these other platforms can't do that. we, as a nonprofit, are getting the word out everywhere we can. But you know, there's over 10,000 diseases, so they're not all going to collect data with us. What I like about similar diseases collecting data together is that we can do projects like this one where these 25 neurodevelopmental disorders will get this extra bump from these researchers. There's also something called, in drug trials, bucket or basket trials. And that's when you're not doing a drug trial on a disease, you're doing it on symptoms. So you might have 3 diseases at the same time. Well, as we've established, there's a lot of diseases that have the same symptoms as DYRK1A. So I'm excited to find more diseases that are similar. And when we move into the immune diseases, we'll do the same thing. We'll try and find as many immune diseases as possible. So we are trying to get the word out. I do know that we have specifically confirmed with Australia that we can, that we meet their data regulations.
Oh, sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Monica from Mexico. I have a question. You were telling us that the data can be collected in Spanish, but if I'm not in the USA, or is it still valuable to put the genetic test, for example, if it was done here in Mexico?
Yes. Everything, just so you know, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a mom, everything that you have about your child's health is valuable. And having it all in one place is even better. We have people enrolled from 58 different countries, but they had to be able to read English. Over 35% of our enrollees or participants are from outside of the United States. But granted, Canada and UK and Australia all speak English. So, but we do 58 countries, so you can enroll from anywhere. The genetic report does not have to be in English. It may take us a little bit longer to get it curated. I've been told that once we curate it, we will return the curation report back into your dashboard, which I had no idea we were going to be doing that, which I thought was pretty cool. Almost everybody in RareX is connected to somebody with a rare disease, and every day somebody comes up with, you know what we should do for the families? You know what we should do for the patients? So we're always trying to think of ways that we can share data back with you or get your data to go farther. And thank you for listening to me.
Any other questions, comments? I have one more comment here. So the record is going to be posted on our YouTube channel. We do have a YouTube channel, our DYRK1A channel, that has a lot of like past events or our meetups, so a lot of good content if you're ever interested. And remember, the Rare Disease Day is February 28th. We are in the Rare Disease Month. If there's one focus for this month, yeah, let's all log in RareX and provide our data and get ready for research. But there's a lot of other ways to get involved. So if you want to raise your hand, volunteer with us in any ways, please don't get shy. You're welcome to reach out. And as an organization, of course, it's ours, your choice. And you saw the presentation, Megan said, like, you can always choose where you want to share. I would ask if you'll be willing to in that data sharing preference agreement, just to allow the contact information to be shared with us, DYRK1A syndrome. We are not going to receive, we are not going to see your family, medical things with it's all de-identified too. It's just receive your name and email, so we know you are part of the platform and you are provide your data in case we want to reach out with some opportunities to participate in something else. So that's it. We're not going to see anything different than that. And that said, I mentioned there's
an iPad.
Yes.
I was gonna say, I was surprised you all had such a cool gift, so I wanted to remind everybody about that.
That's what I was gonna say. Like just for being here, everybody already got like a small digital gift card. But yeah, enter in the platform in the DYRK1A, log in, start provide your data, genetic report, and you're gonna enter to win the tablet. So we are all willing to see who is going to be there. As know until what's the deadline? February 28th, Megan?
February 28th for the genetic reports. So just get that over with, because we want our genetic counselors to have all the time to get that done. And then March 30th, not the 31st, don't ask me why, for completing your surveys. And like I said, you can do them. And you can do this on your phone. In the beginning, it wasn't so friendly, but it's gotten better. So, if you're sitting in a carpool or you're, waiting somewhere, you can log in and see if you can knock out some of the surveys. That's great. I can't thank you enough for you all for your time. I know it's 9 o'clock on the East Coast and it's the witching hour on the West Coast. So I really appreciate it. You're obviously motivated if you're here. But there's a lot of parents out there like Megan of 2010 that's like, I already did that. Nothing's going to come of it. We need to get them excited. So when you're finished, if you could go on your social media and say, you know what? Today, Anna said this. I felt like I did something for my child for the first time in a long time. I mean, other than fight at IEP meetings and fight with insurance companies, some days we can't do anything to help our kids. And this is something that doesn't just help our kids, it helps all of the other families get the story out. So I think you all need to be kind of cheerleaders for each other. So Amy and Anna aren't the bad guys that always say, you guys have to remember to do this. But also, tell the new families when they come on, when they're still in that shock that like, well, there's a place where you can put your data and learn. When that person has their first seizure, support them and then say, don't forget, change that question so you can answer the seizure survey. I don't want people to be nagged, but I don't want people to forget that this is part of your fabric now. This is your microphone. And that said, I'm going to stop talking and thank all of you for your time. And Anna, thank you for being incredibly organized and efficient.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Megan, for your time. Thank you all that participate. And I can't wait to see those genetic reports coming in the platform. Have a great night, everybody, and a great day in Sydney. That's mid of the day, Australia. Bye-bye, everybody.